Okay, so let's get started with our scope management, which is the next knowledge area. Okay. What is scope management? What do people think? What is a scope management? What is a scope? How do you define that? What is a scope? Yes. So you try to say something? Yes, yes, Utsav.
I would say briefly describe the objectives and what we are trying to achieve, and the milestone and the resource and the cost budget.
Okay. So you're saying defining milestones and objectives.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think Prashant is saying specifications. Okay. But tell me why we are defining a scope. Why are we defining scope?
If we are not defining a scope, then later on when we go for a detailed project overview or requirement study, then it becomes difficult. So it should be specific about these are these things we are trying to achieve, and this is the timeline and the resource and the cost budget.
So what do you think if we do not define a scope or we do not define a scope properly, what kind of problems can come?
I think it should be difficult afterwards if we define not if you are not able to define it properly, then challenges come from the client side that we need this and we need those kind of things which were not properly depicted to us in the kind of a demo kind of a thing. If you're doing some demo and you are saying something that this product is trying or can achieve these kind of things, and suppose it is not written in the scope, then it becomes difficult.
Okay. So, but if you define the scope properly, don't you think customers still come and ask you, maybe request
Yeah,
some
yeah,
more features?
yeah, yeah. It happens.
So what is the difference? You define or don't
So
define? In both the cases, you're going
even
to come with some changes.
yeah, even if you in practical life, I have seen that even if you define properly, then the customer comes up with some weird things at the last.
Yeah, you know, whenever the customer comes, we always tell it something weird. Jean is saying disputes. What kind of dispute you will get? We don't define scope properly. Anil? Rahul? How we can check the quality? Okay. You mean the quality, checking the quality would be difficult if we do not define the scope properly? It gives direction, vision of the planning process and initiative. I agree with you, Rahul. But tell me, if we do not define the scope properly, what kind of problem we can move into? Example in phone, budget, low end or high end, and what are the requirements? I didn't get actually what you're saying. See, you cannot finalize the budget. You can finalize the budget. Only thing is that customer will come up with some changes. He will anyway come even if you define the scope. I see you define some scope anyway. If you do not define it properly or keep it loose, fluid, what kind of problem we can have? Up to what cost and to reach what segment like? Okay. Budget is not fixed. Okay, so if we do not define the scope, we will be finding it difficult to fix the budget. Fine. Okay, so Anil is saying that phone should have one camera or two, and what pixels and so support. So we are not very clear about it. It may say the phone should have camera. Nobody knows one or two. So it will be difficult to first define the budget. What else will be difficult? So budget I can understand because you don't know what is in, what is out, and so for what we should budget we don't know, or it is difficult to know. Yeah, I agree. But I will again go to the Prashant. So see the disputes. If you have not defined the scope properly, the first thing which you will move into is the disputes. Why? Because we have not defined the scope properly, then different people will think differently. Customer will say that it is in the scope, you should do it. You will say it is out of scope, we will not do it. Even we both agree to do it, we don't know who will sponsor this. Organization will take it because it's part of the scope, or client will give the money because it is not out of this in the scope. So if you define the scope properly, the first thing with which you can save the project are the disputes. More crystal and clear you define a scope, you will avoid disputes. And more you avoid disputes, more smooth your project will go. Second thing, you set the expectations. What customer is going to get? What users is going to get? Yes, exactly, Utsav. What about we are delivering in this budget? Yes. We have to that is what the expectation all about. Customer saying, I am paying you X money, what I'm going to get? If you have not defined his scope properly, he will make his own assumptions. And when he will make his own assumption, what you are delivering and what he is expecting will be, there is a difference. And there is a price to that. Now he is thinking that X price is for Y deliverable. You provide him Z, which is less than Y, as the customer perceive normally. You say he's paying more because he's getting less value, and ultimately move into a kind of dispute. So scope management is the base of the project, and if you can define a good scope, only if you have defined a good charter. You know your objectives, you know your business case, you know your deliverables, high level deliverables, you know the scope of the high level scope of the project and product, you know the expectations of the stakeholders. If these 4 or 5 things you know, you will be able to define the scope properly. So if you have not defined the charter, trying to define the scope, you will face problem. So charter is the main input for defining the scope and stakeholders' expectations from the project. Only then you can define the scope properly, set the expectation, and will be able to deliver on expectation without any dispute. Most of the debates, most of the discussion, most of the challenges, claim, disputes are mainly because of the scope. And where the project will go, you never know. So we define the scope to ensure that we do all the work which is required in this project and do only that work which is required in this project. All and only the work that is required to achieve the objectives of this project. If you don't know the objectives properly, you will not be able to define the scope properly. Why you want to achieve objectives? Because you want to address the business case. That is a business need. So if you do not know the business need, you will not be able to define proper objectives. If you are not able to define the proper objectives, you will not be able to define the proper scope. And if you will not be able to define the proper scope, the satisfaction of the client is difficult to achieve. So there are 6 processes in this. We'll start with the scope management plan. Like this. There are 5 or 4 processes are in planning and 2 are in monitoring and control. As I just mentioned you, there are 2 things in the project scope, normally product scope and the project scope, because product is part of the project scope. But if you are asked specifically about the project scope, you only talk about project scope. Don't include the product scope. So what are product scope? You talk about in the mobile phone, 1 GB RAM, right? 4-inch screen, right? Dust proof, waterproof, or if you are making it specially for the village purpose, then it should be dust proof. Right? So these will become part of the product scope. What is the project scope? Requirement design of the product. Activity. This is feature oriented. This is work oriented. Requirement? No. Or could be yes. Depending upon. We have to define it. 5 prototype. Right? And you can also define what the, like during this project, what other things you will deliver. what should be part of the scope. Like every week or every month, you will provide a project status report to the customer. That will become part of the project scope. Once you have told this, you have to do this. Right? So in all the subsidiary plans, we talk about project management plan, right? And we also talk about that project management plan comprise of all the subsidiary processes plan. And that is like scope management plan, time management plan, risk management plan, resource management plan, right? So every knowledge area has a management plan. Every knowledge area has a management plan, at least one, in this case two. What this management plan normally contains? All the management plan contains all the answer of how. We say, if you have a question, how you are going to manage the scope? The answer is there in the scope management plan. How you are going to optimize the productivity of your resources? The question is how. Will be written in the resource management plan. How you are going to address changes in the requirement? The question is how. The answer is there in the requirement management plan. Whenever you get a question of how you're going to particular knowledge area, the answer is there in that management plan. What tools are you using to manage your risk? Answer is, because the question is not about what tools. The question is how you are going to analyze your risk using your tools. So sometimes in the question what will come, but actually the meaning is how you are doing it. How you are analyzing your risk. The answer is in the risk management plan. Right? So this is, I'm especially explaining it this time. In all the knowledge areas management plan, this applies. So input is project charter. You prepare a project scope management plan and requirement management plan to define what tools and techniques you are going to use, what are the methodology you are going to use, how you are going to decompose your deliverables into smaller pieces, how you are going to control changes in the scope or changes in the requirement. So wherever the question is how, you mention here which product metrics you are going to measure, or how you are going to measure the progress or the performance of the requirement of the scope through metrics. Where the metrics is defined? In the management plan. How are you going to trace, track and report the requirements or scope? So first thing is prepare a scope management plan. As part of the scope management plan, we prepare scope management plan and the requirement management plan. Right? The next step is to collect requirements. Now many times I tell you that the way the process is defined discretely in PMBOK, like collect requirement, define a scope, create WBS, validate a scope, control scope. Many times all these processes are not so discrete in all the projects. Bigger the project, more discrete processes you will find. The smaller the project, these processes will overlap. Maybe collect requirement and define a scope appear to be one action or one process in a very small project. Maybe collect requirement, scope, defining scope, creative work breakdown structure, all this will come out to be a one process in a small project. So for a better understanding, PMBOK defines it very discreetly. In actual, they may not be so distinguished. In many projects, define scope happen first and then you do the collect requirements. In many places, you may be having an opportunity to collect the requirement first and then define the scope. Right process is you collect the requirement and define the scope, but the fact of the matter is that you have to produce, you have to submit the proposal first, customer will accept it, only then you can do the requirement, detailed requirement. So basically, once you have submitted the scope, your scope is already, or submitted the proposal, your scope is already closed. What you're going to do, you're going to collect the requirement, and if you find something more than the scope defined, then you redefine the scope. And that exactly mean is by defining the scope. So all the requirement related to business, solution, technical, transition after the project is complete, project quality requirements, all non-functional requirement, functional requirement, all requirements are to be part of the, and there are various tools and techniques we use for collecting the requirements. I will come to them one by one. Okay, so if you see, the main input is scope management plan and the project chart, because that will help us to collect the requirement, because that will help us to know what we want to achieve. And the stakeholder register, who are the stakeholders going to participate in collect requirement. We do by interviewing, by focus group. Focus group is to, when the requirements are not very clear and you need to evolve the requirement, you have to understand the requirement. So you collect couple of SMEs in one group, do some kind of brainstorming, and these SMEs belong to only one function. What about facilitated workshop? This is about cross-functional. So this is function 1, this is function 2. There are few SMEs here. There are few SMEs here of this function, but project is an integrated unit, right? Both for F1 and F2 functionality 2 have some kind of integration at some point of time, and they should shake hand smoothly. It is important that you call a facilitated workshop, calling some people from this group, calling some people from this group, and have a discussion to come out with the cross-functional requirements. Okay, so the idea is focus group is to get clarity on the functional requirements, one function requirement, and facilitated workshop is to cross-functional requirements. Okay, all these activities, this year or this involvement happen through group activity techniques like brainstorming, etc. Group decision making techniques, like how you make decisions. When you discuss together, you have to make some decisions, so these techniques are used. You can use questionnaires and surveys, like if these people are not together in one room, they are scattered in geographical areas, you may send them some questionnaire or survey to fill it, so that you can get the opinion from the different people who are not geographically located at one place. You can have observations, and observations means you are developing a system which already exists, you are developing it in a different form. So how do you collect the requirement? By observing the current operations. That is called observation. Nowadays there are various softwares also. If you install on the machine, they keep capturing that what the operator is doing and produce a report. So that could work as an observation report, which will help you to define the requirements. Prototyping, normally getting the clarity on this, a model. primary things to give a realistic understanding of to the customer or user that this is what going to be come out as a project or the outcome of the project. Benchmarking, this is normally used in manufacturing units, especially in the place the segment of the market segment is or the competitors are less. So suppose one competitor has one of the competitor has launched a mobile phone. Now you do not right now in that segment. So how do you define your requirements? By looking at what the competitor's product give as a feature. Those all feature will become our feature as well, and we may try to push some more one or more feature to take an edge on the customer, on the competitor. And such kind of requirements called benchmarking. We are doing benchmarking on our competitor's product. Okay, context diagram, document analysis are other ways of collecting the requirement. What we come out is a requirement document and a traceability matrix. Anybody has any idea what is a traceability matrix? Any idea? Anyone? What's the traceability matrix? So traceability matrix. Who should be addresses in case of a specific requirement query? Exactly. I think Utsav is a business person, understands far better whether the requirements are being met. So it's a traceability matrix is a matrix which help us to map the requirement in all the phases of the project and ensure that all the requirements are taken care of in all the phases of the project and therefore delivered all the requirements to the customer or user. Okay, so you look at this. Group creativity techniques are like brainstorming, like how people come together and develop something new or come out with some conclusion. Nominal group techniques means you a kind of democracy. You rank the product by vote or rank the feature by vote if you are not achieving any consensus on that. Delphi technique is one of the very important technique and quite used with the people who are geographically not co-located. So to get their ideas, we normally use survey or questionnaire to send out to all those people. In Delphi technique, we do not tell these people that who all are involved. Who all are involved in this. We do not tell anybody, so it is all completely anonymous. So people will give their honest opinion, and therefore we get a wide variety of ideas, and then we can collect them, compile them, and get the final requirements. Idea or mind mapping or affinity diagram are the methods to structure the brainstorming. Otherwise, brainstorming could be unstructured. Okay, the group decision techniques you might be knowing already. Unanimity means all agree on one. This is the best type of decision making, but difficult to achieve. Okay, a lot of effort has to put in to get the unanimity. Majority means most of the people, democracy. Plurality means if the people are not able to conclude on anything, we normally give it to a specific group to decide. Like in parliament, you say the group of ministers, GOM. So if we need to conclude something, we normally give it to GOM, and they decide. Then normally parliament accept it. Dictatorship doesn't require anything else. Once said, everything is done. Okay, benchmarking, context diagram, we all discussed. So we get outcome as a requirement document, and requirement document means your all business requirement, functional and non-functional requirement, quality requirement, supporting requirement, training requirement. In all the requirements, whenever we scope come into picture, there are always assumption and constraints. Document them. The key to bringing clarity in the scope, that you write down assumptions and constraints, and also write down the acceptance criteria for the requirements, not for the product but the requirements. The second is traceability matrix. Traceability matrix works like this. It's kind of matrix. So here it's the phase. This is requirement phase, design phase, construction phase, and I say deployment phase, or commissioning, or the production phase, I say. So what happens? Or release phase means we are releasing the product. So here you have requirement 1. So once you do the requirement, you write down requirement, all the requirements in this. Once you do the design, you tell that section 3.2 of design address this requirement. Section 1.2 address requirement 2. Section 5 addresses requirement 3. Section 6.5 address requirement 4. Section 9 address requirement 5. Similarly, when you say construction, you say XYZ file is for requirement 1. Particular hardware and this software is for requirement 2. So every requirement is getting mapped in all the phases, and therefore in this also you release 1.1. Release 1.1 contain this. Release 1.1 contain this. In the 1.1 it was not there. Now you release 1.2 and include R3. So you will write here 1.2. So this R1, R2, R4, R5 released in 1.1 and R3 released in 1.2. Right? And this way every phase you ensures that all the requirements are being taken care of. And so it eliminates the chance of any requirement gets missed out from the delivery. Okay, the next step is defining the scope. And defining the scope is basically a narrative statement where we try to define what is in the scope, what is out of the scope, both product as well as the project. Again, scope management plan and project charters are input. You mainly do some kind of activities to understand what all is there in the project scope. Some kind of product analysis, alternative analysis, some kind of discussions, and you create a project scope statement, which is a narrative statement of telling that what is in the scope, what is out of the scope. So project charter requirement documents are input, because requirement documents will tell you all what are the all requirements, so you can define a scope around. So what is the difference between requirement and scope? Requirement are this and scope is this. So these are the requirements. You write what exactly, and scope encloses this requirement from the external world. So any requirement falls here is out of the scope. Any requirement falls within this boundary. So actually scope create a circle and demarcation and separate the in the scope from the out of the scope. Now few of the techniques which you use, normally product analysis. So product analysis means you have defined the requirements for a product. Now you go through the an analysis with respect to like value engineering, means what features are producing what value. Value analysis is name for the similar thing. System engineering, what kind of system we are going to build and how different features are participating in it, and based on that you define the scope. Alternative generation means the various, sometimes method become important. So you know that through one way, through the way one, you can achieve it, but that is much more costly. If you use the way two, the same thing can be achieved at a lower cost. Now you take the alternatives, both of these, and then you decide on one of them. So that method become part of the scope. That developing by this method is only in the scope, not any other method. Facilitated workshop you already know. You come out with a scope statement which talks about the scope description, what is in the scope, acceptance criteria for the product, the final outcome, okay, what all deliverables are there, any exclusion means out of the scope, all the assumption and constraints. This helps in common understanding among the stakeholders and therefore reducing the chances of dispute or eliminating them. And also it helps in better change management. So it's a narrative statement actually, which talks about product and project scope, what is in the scope, what is out of the scope. Okay, and then we have a create work breakdown structure. So once we have defined in the scope, out of the scope, in the scope there is a product features, the project work. We take the project work and then subdivide this into smaller pieces. So what is a work breakdown structure? Work breakdown structure is a deliverable oriented hierarchical structure which help us to subdivide the work of the project into smaller pieces for a better management, for better estimation. So scope statement, scope management plan, requirement document, all are input. You decompose it in the smaller pieces. The deliverables get decomposed in smaller pieces, and scope statement with work breakdown structure create baseline. So scope statement plus WBS. Scope statement plus WBS are the together make scope baseline. So how we decompose and what is the importance of decomposition. Look at this. There are three ways decomposition is given here. We have project deliverable main. We first divide the project into phases: requirement, design, construction, commissioning, testing, and within each phase we define deliverables, the requirement document, traceability matrix. If the project is big, we can define functional requirement, non-functional. Maybe different people will do it. The last box in the hierarchy called work package. The leaf in this hierarchy or leaf in this tree are called work package. Second way, you do not have phase. You directly put some deliverables and you subdivide them further to reach to work package. What is the purpose? Better management, easy to manage. Where we should stop? There is no ground rule. You say you stop where it becomes easy to manage. Manageable, estimatable, estimate become easy, estimation become easy, assignment become easy, assignment become easy, tracking become easy, tracking become easy. So now for different people it could be different. So you take your own, if you are in charge of the project, you take your own tolerance and all or your own capability and define at a level where it becomes easily manageable, estimable, assignable, trackable. Right? Normally in the software project, we say there is some rule called 8 to 80. 8 to 80 hours. That means no less than 8 hours and no greater than 80 hours. Means the work package should be of somewhat between 8 to 80 hours. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a good guide. Just mean that if you think some work package is less than 8 hours, think twice. If some work package is going beyond 80 hours, think twice. Can you subdivide it? So what is decomposition? And what is important decomposition? We should do the decomposition which is necessary and sufficient. Too much of decomposition can create problem or can increase the overhead. So too high decomposition, too low decomposition, both are problems. So we have to create a balance. The idea of decomposition is a rule of 100. Nothing should be left out and no extra work is included. Right? With these two principles, if you do decomposition, you will do the right decomposition and you come out with a work breakdown structure, and that work breakdown structure along with WBS dictionary. What is WBS dictionary? Everything about the work package. So there is a work package, number of hours, the efforts, time, who will do it, assignment, anything, what is to be done, what is to be done as part of work package, what are the risks involved in, anything you want to tell about a work package is there in the WBS dictionary. So you have an entry for every work package in WBS dictionary which defines all the attribute of work package. Therefore, they are two documents, but still they are one. And scope baseline means scope statement, WBS and WBS dictionary. Right? Please stop me whenever anything is not clear. Ask questions, type down into the chat box or speak out. Don't wait till end. Okay, this is one sample of work breakdown structure. I think very similar to what is given to you. Okay. The next step comes is a validate scope, which is a part of the monitoring and control. So what do we do in the validate scope? See, in execution, we produce deliverables, right? That we already discussed in integration. That during execution, we produce deliverables. What happens once the deliverable is produced? It will go through quality control. It goes through quality control in the quality chapter. Quality control will give us verified deliverables. That is quality verification. We get verified deliverables. These verified deliverables go as an input to validate scope, and that produce accepted deliverables. So deliverable is produced, it goes through quality control, which checks for correctness. It's checked for correctness, and it produces verified deliverables. This is, and it goes through, then it goes as an input to validate scope, right? It checks for completeness. It checks for completeness. So correctness in quality control and completeness in this. So whatever is produced is correct or not? It is in quality control. Now whatever produced is produced or not, that is a part of the validated scope. And therefore the objective of the validated scope to go to the user or the customer and get it accepted. Because by now you have a deliverable which is correct, which is verified for correctness, verified for completeness. Now it has to be accepted by this. So it is normally, this is done by tester and this is done by business people like Utsav. Okay, the business analyst who check for that whatever the customer said is there in the product or not, and then go to the customer and say please accept it. So either he will accept it or give a change request, right? Then the next part is the controlling scope. And normally how do you do it? How do you do the validate scope? Through reviews, audits, walkthroughs, examining, verifying. The next step is controlling the scope. Controlling the scope is whatever the scope we defined in our project scope, we try to see are we going as per our plan or not. Right? So we have work performance data, that is during the execution you have worked on deliverables, which deliverable is yet to start, which deliverable is half done or in progress, which deliverables are completed. That is what project performance data is. We do a variance analysis, that is plan versus actual, how it was planned, how it is happening, and produce project performance information. And we find some variance, we issue a change request. So uncontrolled changes are called scope creep, means dispute. Means if you have not defined your scope properly, this is what will happen. Performance data, which delivery started, what is in progress, which are done, what is the status right now. And then we produce a variance analysis to assess the magnitude of variance. How much variance is there? What action we need to take? What is the root cause? And then deciding on preventive and corrective measures. Right? And that is called controlling scope. And that is the final. Any question? You need a WBS even for a work of 1 week. Work breakdown structure is nothing but a list of work we are going to do. So we're just listing that all this work we will do. So even if it is a 1 week, we're going to do something, right? And we'll do in steps. That is what the work breakdown structures is all about. To list down your to-do list. It is a to-do list of the project. Any other question? No question. So let's do one thing. The next step is to attempt the 15 questions provided in the handouts. Right? It is almost 8:37, means 8:40, going to 8:40. I will say let's take a break. Come back by 9:15. Okay? Now you take a break also attempt questions, and I hope you will be able to attempt them by 9:15. Will that work? You want a little more time? Instead of 9:15, let's meet at 9:20. Is this 9:15 should be okay? 9:15 is okay with others also? Okay, you can take a cup of tea with you and also do the 15 questions of scope management, right? So we'll resume at 9:15. We'll resume at 9:15 a.m. and we'll discuss the answers of the scope management questions. Great. Okay, so the question is, you're creating a table that link the requirement to project objectives and track through the project life cycle to ensure delivery of all the requirements. This table is an output of, so which table he is talking about? Can you tell me which table he is talking about? Requirement traceability matrix, and requirement traceability matrix is an output of, right, it's an output of A, that is the collect requirement, correct? So A is the right answer. What about question number 2? A, B, A. Okay, scope validation is reviewing an installed module of its satisfactory completion, and second is managing changes to the scope baseline. See, scope validation is not managing changes. Scope validation is validating that whatever supposed to complete is complete or not. You say there are two things, quality control and scope validation. Quality control means looking for correctness, and scope validation means looking for completeness. Managing changes is a change management process. Right, what about question number 3? Fantastic. What about question number 4? All A? Oh. A project manager has just been assigned to a new project and has been given the preliminary project scope statement and the project charter. First thing the project manager must do is, see, when you take up anything from someone, what do you do first? Start working for the next step, assuming that whatever is done is good. Is that? Don't we try to understand that whatever is done so far is right? Otherwise, what we will do will also be wrong, right? If somebody has done something wrong. If something is missing in the already existing things and we develop something over that, then something is missing here that will continue there, right? The next step. Don't you think that once we take up something first time, we try to analyze and see that it is done properly, and the product as of now, whatever being produced as of now, has been doing absolutely properly, and all the things are taken care of before we move forward. Don't you think that is a better choice than just acting on the next action? Right? So then then the answer should be B, not the A, right? A is just acting to the next step. What about question number 5? Okay. What about question number 6? All C. Great. What about question number 7? I think there are quite a similarity in all the options. Either you are all are wrong or you are all are right. That's little surprising. Okay, let me see. Let's read this statement. Okay, Rahul says B. Okay. Okay. Validate scope can be best described as the process of, we're talking about two things, right? One is B and one is D. Obtaining stakeholders' formal acceptance of the project deliverable. Second thing, verifying that all the project's objectives have been met. Okay. So scope validation, the validated scope, nothing to do with the project objective. Its job is, see what is the output of validated scope? Accepted deliverables. So that's the objective of the validated scope. That get it accepted by the customer or the users or the stakeholders. Verifying all the project objective have been met could be a part of the project closure. Isn't it? The project object, achieving project objective is just not a scope. It's all about time, cost, quality, everything, right? It's not just a scope. Right? So B is the right answer, because what is the purpose of validated scope? Is to get the deliverable accepted by the user, customer, or any stakeholder. Right? What about question number 8? All B. Very good. What about 9? What about 10? That's great going. all B. Wait, let's talk about 11th. All A. That's great, yeah. This is good. This is good. This has gone good. And then C. Oh, the B. Okay. The project scope is a feature and function. No, sorry, not B. Okay. The work that must be done in order to deliver a product with the specific features and function. Right. That is one thing. C is a document containing project objective and functions and non-functional requirements. That is a requirement document, isn't it? What is a requirement document? Which is containing functional and non-functional requirement. And a scope is the total work which is to be done to deliver the product. So C is basically a requirement document. It's not a scope statement. What about 13? D, D and B. Okay. Your client wants to know how formal verification and acceptance of the project deliverables will be done. In which of the following documents the process of the formal verification and process and acceptance is documented? See, it is asking how the formal verification and acceptance of the project deliverables will be done. How it will be done. Where is how? How is there in management plan? The processes are written in management plan. Method is written in the management plan. The methodology is written in management plan. The WBS dictionary contains the things of the what is to be done as part of the work package, not how the verification acceptance will happen. WBS dictionary tells who will do what, when will it happen, what is to be done as part of the work package. It is specifications of the work package, not about the validation process or verification process. Right? Is that clear? Okay, so what about 14? D, D and B. Okay. Which of the following is the output of validate scope process? Oh, this is a true and false questions, right? If you go in handouts, you can see what is the output, and which is neither D nor B. It is C. Validated deliverables are input to the validate scope process. That is the quality control. Okay. Here it is. It should be verified. This could be confusing. Verified actually. It is verified deliverables as input and accepted deliverables as output. And therefore the confusion is okay. Then I accept that. That is a mistake in the question. What about 15? But normally when something come like this, that what is the output, you just go and see what is listed as an output. It is not about understanding. It is about what PMI has listed in the output, or what PMI has listed in tools and techniques, what PMI has listed in input. It's not about my understanding. Whenever such questions comes, you just tick the only that option which is actually listed there. Question number 15 is DDC. Okay. Brainstorming, Delphi techniques and affinity diagrams are part of which of the following tools or techniques? They are basically group activity techniques. The focus groups are meant for calling people of same function and deciding on the requirements or the scope. So it is not an activity technique. The group activity, group decision making techniques are used in focus groups. Okay, so therefore C is not a technique basically. The D is a technique. It could be a confusion between B and D, then it's fine. But C is not a technique. Okay. Okay, so let's move to the next step. It is time management, right?